In 1980, a man walked into a police station in Ambato, Ecuador, and made a confession. He said he had killed over 300 people. 300, mostly young girls between the ages of 7 and 12, across 3 countries in more than a decade. The police did not believe him at first. Nobody could. Then he led them to the graves, 53 bodies in shallow ground across the Andean highlands. Then more. And more. Pedro Alonso López became known as the Monster of the Andes. He was convicted of 110 murders. He served 14 years. In 1998, he was released. His current whereabouts are unknown. Pedro Alonso López was born on October 8, 1948, in the Tolima department of Colombia. He was one of 13 children. His mother raised the family alone in a country torn apart by civil conflict that had claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. His father had died before Pedro was born. At 8 years old, Pedro was expelled from his home after a serious incident. His mother put him out on the street. Alone in Colombia, he was taken in by a stranger who offered food and shelter. That stranger treated him with cruelty for months. What followed was a childhood defined entirely by violence and abandonment. By the time he reached adulthood, whatever capacity for empathy he may have had was gone entirely. As a young man, López drifted through Colombia committing petty crimes. In 1969, he was arrested for car theft and sent to prison. Inside, he was gang raped by a group of fellow inmates within his first days of incarceration. His response was methodical. Over the following weeks, he identified each of the men involved. He killed 3 of them. He was given 2 additional years for the prison murders. When he was finally released, something had changed permanently. Whatever capacity for restraint he may have had was gone. He walked out of prison and began killing. Throughout the 1970s, López moved across Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador. He targeted indigenous girls in rural communities, victims whose disappearances were less likely to trigger investigations, whose families had less access to authorities, whose cases fell through the cracks of 3 different justice systems. He approached them in public spaces, plazas, markets, roadsides. He offered food. He offered help. He lured them away. He killed them in isolated locations in the Andean highlands and buried them in shallow graves. He later told investigators he preferred to kill in the morning so he could watch the sunrise. He said it made him feel powerful. In March 1980, López approached a young girl in a plaza in Ambato, Ecuador. A group of market vendors saw him and intervened. They held him until police arrived. Initially, authorities did not know what they had. López was brought in for questioning about a single attempted abduction. Then he started talking. He told investigators about the graves. He described locations across Ecuador, Peru, and Colombia with precise detail. He led police to 53 bodies in the hills around Ambato alone. Each grave confirmed what investigators were beginning to understand. This was not a single crime. This was the largest documented serial killing spree in modern South American history. In Ecuador, the maximum sentence for murder was 16 years. There was no provision for consecutive sentences regardless of the number of victims. López was convicted of 110 murders and sentenced to 16 years. He served 14, receiving a 2-year reduction for good behavior. In 1994, he was released from Garcia Moreno prison and deported to Colombia. Colombian authorities attempted to prosecute him for an old murder charge. Instead, a court declared him insane. He was institutionalized in a psychiatric facility. In February 1998, doctors declared him sane and released him. His bail was set at $50. After his release in 1998, López visited his elderly mother. According to her account, he asked about his inheritance. When she told him she had nothing, he sold her only bed and chair to strangers on the street and left. A few months later, in September 1999, he vanished. Interpol issued a red notice. Colombian and Ecuadorian authorities issued alerts. Nothing. Pedro Alonso López, a man who confessed to over 300 murders, had simply disappeared. Some investigators believe he is still alive. He would be in his mid-70s today.
His victims' families have never received answers. Many of the 300-plus graves
He claimed to know about have never been found. The monster of the Andes remains one of the most disturbing cases in the history of criminal justice. Not just because of the scale of his crimes, but because of what came after. A man who confessed to over 300 murders served 14 years. Less than 1 month per victim. He was then released with $50 bail and declared sane by the same system that had failed his victims for decades. The young girls he killed came from the most vulnerable communities in 3 countries. Indigenous communities, rural communities, communities where a missing child might not even generate a police report. Pedro Alonso López understood that. He chose his victims accordingly. That is what made him the monster of the Andes. Not just the killing, the calculation,